Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he comes, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes a beautiful book called Madhurya Kadambini. Madhurya means sweetness, and Kadambini means a series of clouds. And what he explains is that the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is raining from these clouds of mercy. And rain is so nice. Of course, in today's day and age, we don't like rain. Thunderstorms mean delayed flights, so we don't like storms. But actually in original spiritual culture, in rural culture, rain is actually the best thing ever. Because rain signifies growth, rain signifies nourishment, rain signifies prosperity on the land and, you know, fruits and vegetables and rejuvenation. So whenever there's rain, it's actually the greatest source of celebration, actually. But obviously in the city, we don't see it like that. But rain is very auspicious. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy is raining down on this world. But when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu rains, it's not just a drizzle. It's like a serious thunderstorm. In fact, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's love is said to be like a waterfall. I remember last year on the Bhakti retreat, we went to a waterfall, right? Yeah. So I didn't see anyone brave enough to take a shower. Actually, some did, actually. They went under the waterfall. They didn't go right in, though. But generally, you don't take shower under a waterfall. It's too intense. It's too fast. It's too, just too much force. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's love is like that. It's like a waterfall. So then what it said is that the Goswamis of Vrindavan, what they do is they take the waterfall of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's love and they make it into an ocean. An ocean that anyone can bathe in. Because you can't bathe in a waterfall, but you can bathe in an ocean. And so Rupa Goswami, who's the foremost follower of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he takes the love that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu displayed, and he takes the practice of Nam Sankirtan that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu exemplified, and then what he does is he makes it into an ocean. In other words, he describes a process and a way by which anyone can then go and bathe in that love. And then he calls that book the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the ocean of loving devotion. And anyone who then reads that book is then able to also have access to the same spiritual love, divine love that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was experiencing and giving to everyone. So Rupa Goswami makes that ocean, and then Rupa Goswami is like a boatman on that ocean, and he's navigating that ocean, he's riding on that ocean of devotion, he's experiencing the rasa, the mellows of that ocean. And when a boat rides on an ocean, there's waves. So it's said that also the commentaries on the books are like waves in the ocean. Just like waves, they come from the ocean, they heighten the ocean, and then eventually they go back into the ocean. So it said that the commentaries of the acharyas on Shastra are like the waves. They ultimately come from the Shastra, but what they do is they heighten the emotional intensity of the Shastra, and then eventually they just go right back into the ocean itself. They're non-different. The commentaries are non-different from the Shastra. Therefore, Rupa Goswami also writes all these commentaries, and so you can now picture it in your mind. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's love, his mercy is like a waterfall, incredibly intense. But then Rupa Goswami makes an ocean out of it, inviting anyone to come and bathe in that ocean. He navigates a boat on that ocean, riding the rasa himself, and then inviting everyone to come and explore it. And in the process, there are waves, there are realizations, commentaries which are coming out of this ocean, which are giving us greater insight into the ocean. And then ultimately, everyone is invited to become an aquatic and dive into that ocean. And therefore, Rupa Goswami says everyone should become a makara. Makara means a shark. Become a shark. not a loan shark or any other corporate shark or something like that, but a shark in the ocean of devotion, because he says the sharks, they go deep, they navigate to the depths of that ocean and they find the jewels. So he says you have to go deep. So yes, this metaphor is very, very beautiful, because you can say spiritual life is like that. I often give this analogy that spiritual life is like an ocean. And some people are just enjoying the ocean from the shores. They enjoy watching everyone else sport in the ocean. And that brings some enjoyment for sure. But then there are some people who decide to go to the shore, but they just go to the edge and they just dip their feet in and they get some enjoyment from that. And then there are others who decide to jump in and swim on the ocean. And they go right to the middle and they are convinced they've dived into the ocean because they're now surrounded by the ocean. And of course, they have made an endeavor. But still, they are only on the surface. But then who is that person, who are those individuals that then not just dive in and swim on the ocean, but then go deep and search what's in the ocean bed? Those are the deepest devotees. Those are the ones who are able to find the real treasures. And so that's what we are all trying to do. We're trying to get off the deck chair on the side of the ocean. We're trying to make that endeavor to really dip in, and then not just dip in, but go in, and then once we're in, we want to go deep. But sometimes it feels like there are so many obstacles. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu comes to South India, then he meets the Kurma Brahmana, and the Kurma Brahmana says, I cannot tolerate the waves of material life anymore. So he's experiencing a different type of wave, because sometimes what happens is when you try to go into the ocean, then there are waves, and the waves always seem to be pushing you back. And so we experience all these waves of material life which seem to be like an obstacle to us diving deep into the ocean. But still somehow the devotee has to contend with those waves and keep going, keep pushing, keep endeavoring, keep trying, and keep going deeper into that ocean, because there are many, many beautiful things to discover. So on evenings like this, we are spending some time just to maybe explore that ocean a little bit deeper, maybe to address some of the waves that are blocking us from going deeper, and maybe to share and explore some of our realizations in what it means to be diving deeper into the process of bhakti. So yes, we have some time, maybe like an hour or 45 minutes, whatever it may be. So I have some questions here, but first I'll open it up and see if anyone here would like to begin with any question. Otherwise, shall I begin here? Okay, all right, here you go.
Krishna Maharaj. Seeing as you're talking about mercy in the introduction.
Oh my God, you're an Englishman.
Yeah. My questions are on that. I've heard from other devotees that devotees are more merciful than the Lord, and I'm a little confused about that, because I've heard Krishna is the controller, the supreme controller of everything. So when a devotee is acting mercifully, isn't Krishna acting through the devotees? So yeah, I'm just a bit confused. I don't know. Sorry.
So you've heard that the devotees are more merciful than Krishna, but then you sometimes think like Krishna is the source of everything, so how can anyone be more merciful than him? The devotee's capacity to be merciful is coming from Krishna. So in that sense, Krishna is the source of everything. Aham sarvasya prabhavo mata sarvam pravartate. Krishna says, I am the source of everything. Everything comes from me. So therefore we find Krishna is such a broad-minded Supreme Lord that he doesn't just hold all the power, hold all the influence, hold all the qualities for himself. But he actually invests those in others so that he can have loving relationships with them, so that they can also go and serve and expand the influence of love. Krishna expands, Krishna and Srimati Radharani are one, but they are eternally separated. And in Srimati Radharani is found the capacity of love that is even greater than Krishna. And therefore Krishna has to come as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the mood of Srimati Radharani to find out what he invested her with, because he doesn't know. So when we hear of things like this, what it confirms to us is that God is ultimately the nicest person. God is not just a heavy person up there on a chair throwing down thunderbolts, who wants to be the center of attention and, is an egomaniac wanting to be the center of everything. No, he invests his potencies everywhere. Friedrich Nietzsche, he said, he was famous, God is dead. But Friedrich Nietzsche also says, Walter Kaufmann, one of his biographers says, Friedrich Nietzsche also said, I will only believe in a God who knows how to dance. Because underlying Friedrich Nietzsche's maybe reservation against God was a personality who's holding everything, who's very uptight, who's the controller. And so he was alluding towards the fact that I will only connect with a divine who has charm, who has love, who has a sense of humor, who is ability, empowers. And so in that we find in Krishna. So yes, the devotees are more merciful than Krishna because Krishna ultimately invests them with that. But Krishna's mercy and the devotee's mercy are inseparable. Jiva Goswami says the devotee's mercy is like a needle and Krishna's mercy is like the thread that follows. So they are inseparable. As soon as you get a devotee's mercy, Krishna's mercy is there. But Krishna gives that right to the devotees to bestow his mercy. And that's why it said that you can't even begin your love for Krishna until you get the mercy of a devotee. Krishna bhakti janma mula hoya sadhu sang. Krishna bhakti prema deho puna mukhya ang. Kaviraj Goswami says that the bhakti janma mula, the root cause of loving devotion to Krishna, is the association of a saintly person. So yes, Krishna gives more. That is the nature of and you can say in that way Krishna is actually more kind than his devotees because he gives the potency of their kindness from his kindness. So they're able to be merciful because of his merciful nature. So in that way, this is all transcendental gymnastics. Does that make sense?
I was wondering, maybe you could give advice on, for example, me, myself, I live in an ashram, like, for the last 7 years. And then traveling around the world, but then at the same time I feel like there is always a challenge, but to be in this, to have this lifestyle, but at the same time I do feel comfortable. And then I'm wondering, maybe sometimes I feel too comfortable and I forget to appreciate where I am and what's happening. So I was wondering how to not to forget.
So you're living in the ashram and you feel happy, you feel comfortable, but sometimes that comfort and happiness transforms into familiarity and you take it for granted. So how to always keep things fresh, keep things... I think it's not so much about where you're living. I think it's about how you're living. In my life, I try to do 3 things at any given point in my life. Learn, launch, and love. I always try to make sure in my life that there's always something I'm learning. There's always something I'm exploring. There's always something I'm trying to develop into. There's some way in which I'm trying to broaden my vision of life. Be a lifelong learner always, you know. Surround yourself with people, with environments and opportunities where you're learning. And then the second thing I try to make sure is always going on in my life is launch. What I mean by launch is not a rocket launch or something like that. Launch means always trying something new. Always, you know, be it a new service or a new project or a new way of doing things, or always exploring newer ways to serve. And then love. I always try to make sure there's things I'm doing which I love, which really inspire me, which touch me, which give me a sense of connection with Krishna. And I think when you're doing those things, then the environment, you see, like we should see the environment as paraphernalia to serve. Like basically, the devotee sees the whole, like when you go on the altar, everything that's there is paraphernalia to serve Krishna. So there's an arati tray, there's a candle, there's flowers, everything that's there is there to serve Krishna. A devotee sees the whole material world and their environment as an altar. In other words, it's all paraphernalia to serve Krishna. And I think when you're learning, you're launching, you're loving, then you're in a mindset where you're always seeing, like, how can I utilize this situation for service? And when you're always utilizing your situation for service, I don't think you can become mechanical or familiar with it, because it's fulfilling its purpose. But when we begin to see our environment as, you know, for our comfort or our gratification or our, you know, then we become familiar, and then it loses that charm, that beauty. So I think it's just about, being in this mindset of how can I always utilize this situation to do more for Krishna, and finding opportunities, better ways to do it. Do you want to respond to that? I mean, that's quite general what I've said. Is that okay? It's okay?
Thank you.
All right.
Hi, Keshava. I had a comment on how you started with the analogy, if I may, and also
Yes.
a question. Two questions, actually. Because you mentioned about this, how the waterfall that of Lord Chaitanya, and how it we partake in this flood. And I was reminded of two things. One is that Srila Prabhupada, in one of his lectures, he says how if you are a small fish and the small fish takes the shelter of the waves, because you mentioned, and it really came to my mind. And Prabhupada, I think, speaks about humility. So when we are the small fish, then we can really take shelter of the wave better and the current. So we are not intimidated by it. So I found that very much encouraging and also in line with how you started. And also towards the end, you were talking about this push and pull effect. And once I listened to this lecture by His Holiness Bhakti Vigna Vinashna Shringa Maharaj, and he was talking about, because often he was saying we talk about the push and pull effect of the material world, but then there is the push and pull effect in Srimad Bhagavatam, or of Srimad Bhagavatam. Like for example, now we are doing Puranjana story, and Canto 4 is the push effect. It really pushes you out of your comfort zone and your illusion. And the pull effect is in Canto 10, where we are attracted by Krishna's beauty. So I found that very beautiful and heart-touching, so I wanted to share.
Thank you, very nice.
And my question is relating to also something relating to a water body. Because now I'm reading this book by Mother Shitala on the life of Narottam Das Thakur. And also this morning I was listening to a lecture by His Holiness Bhakti Maharaj about the life of Sri Narottam Das Thakur. And what really struck me while listening to it is, and also reading, is that the Padma River, a personality, did not know anything about Narottam. And she was told by Lord Chaitanya that as soon as Narottam enters the water will swell up or well up. And then I was thinking that generally we see that, maybe it's a silly question, but how is it that she was not aware of who this person is, but despite that she had this reaction? So I don't know if it makes sense, but I was just thinking that she's not aware of who Narottam is. But as soon as he enters her water, the water swells up. So if, I don't know if you would shed some light on this.
Okay, so everyone's familiar with the story. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared, then at one point he was looking over at the village of Kethuri, and they began saying, Narottam, Narottam, and there was no Narottam at that time. So everyone was thinking, who is this Narottam? And then Mahaprabhu began to explain that no, in the future a great Vaishnav will appear here in Kethuri Gram. And then at that time, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu invested his love in the Padma River, and mentioned that, you know, in the future a great personality will come, and when he enters your river he will be he's darkish, but when he comes into your river he'll overflood it, he'll become golden, and he'll be infused with love, and your waters will overflow like that. So the question here, we went to that place, by the way, in 2014. His Holiness Kadamba Maharaj took about 20 of us to Bangladesh, and we went to the Padma River. And Kethuri is a very, very beautiful place, Narottam's village. And there we went to the Padma River. So then Maharaj said, yeah, let's also go to the middle. So we all went to the middle, and then we all prepared to jump in, wondering, will we get love of God? So we all jumped in. A few drowned, nearly drowned, not in love of Godhead, but just because they couldn't swim. But it was a very transcendental experience. So the question is, how is it that she reacted in that way, even though she was not aware of who Narottam was, and how is that? I've not read anything specifically on this, but we can understand that this is the transcendental influence of a Vaishnav. When Mukunda Maharaj, he went to see Srila Prabhupada for the first time, he said he walked up to the Bowery, he walked up the stairs, he walked into the room where Srila Prabhupada was lecturing, and he came into the room and he sat down and he began to listen to Srila Prabhupada. It was the first time he saw him. And after some time he came out of the room, and then later on he reflected on his experience, and he said, I didn't understand what he was saying. Mr. Prabhupada, think Bengali accent. He said, I didn't understand what he was saying. But he said, the transcendental energy which was emanating from his mouth and the urgency with which he was speaking spoke to my heart and told me, this person has something urgent to tell the world. I have no idea what it is. But this person has something urgent. And he said that he could tell that just by Srila Prabhupada's potency, just by his transcendental, his tejas, his influence. This is called bhakti prabhav, the influence of one's bhakti that it has on another. So often we find this in many, many situations, that when one comes in contact with a great Vaishnav, then they may not know who it is, what it is, why they feel that way, but something happens in their consciousness. And so we can deduct that it's the same thing, that she may not have known. Why she did not know? That was maybe perhaps also some arrangement of Yoga Maya, or the Leela Shakti. But the fact that, you know, Narottam had such potency meant that it was very clear. When he entered, she felt that potency. and therefore everything just happened automatically. So Rupa Goswami also says that bhava is stored in two places. One place is in the dham, and the other place is in the bhakta. So when one is very accomplished in their spiritual practice, then they become like a receptacle of bhav. And because they're overflowing with spiritual emotion, it means anyone who comes in their proximity, even if they are unqualified, even if they don't know, they will begin to experience some bhav. So we can also understand that this was also an arrangement to show the transcendental influence of Narottam Das Thakur, that, you know, just by his very being, he was able to trigger that whole occurrence. So yes, this is the effect of a saintly person. One person, he was going to see Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and he was a very respectable gentleman. So this other devotee, he was bringing him to see Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So he was telling him, like, he's a great saint, and you know, when you go to see him, you should bow down. And this person, he was a big man himself in the material sense. He said, I don't bow down to anyone. He says, he may be a big man, I'm also a big man. So I'll respect him and he should respect me. So I will go, I'll meet him, I'll have a nice conversation with him, but I won't bow down to him. So this other person, no, you know, I said, no, he said, no, I will not bow down to him. Anyway, this person came in. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was sitting on the Vyasasana and he was speaking. And this person came in and he said, I don't know what happened to me. I came in and my head just went down. He said, like, even without thinking. He said, like, he just forced me to bow down by his potency. And then later on, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was explaining that a sadhu is so powerful that even he can arouse certain things within you that you didn't even know were there just by influence. You know, he also said to this person that a sadhu, he can make someone speak what they don't want to speak just by the influence. This is the power. So we can understand this whole pastime of Narottam is an exhibition of Bhakti Prabhav, the influence of a great Vaishnav. There's some thoughts.
I just had another brief question for you. It's about service. Once I was speaking with the senior devotee of our yatra about the element of service, and I was expressing how service is so nourishing and how it nourishes me, the opportunity to serve. And then she said that we have to take it a step further, and our motivation to do service should be, it's pleasing to Krishna. And since then I've been really reflecting about this a lot, and how to really make it applicable, in the sense that sometimes I feel it's not so easy, because after service, if I really think about or meditate or reflect, somewhere I'm still doing it with the motivation of it's really nourishing for me. So how do we make this transition from it being nourishing to me to actually being for Krishna's pleasure only?
When people would join the ashram and we would have to give them services, we always strategically did it in such a way that they would have 3 types of services. One type of service was that which they were naturally inspired by. The second type of service was whatever was the need of the day. And the third type of service was that service which forced them to come out of the comfort zone and depend on Krishna. And so we strategically made sure that someone would have services in all of these areas, because each of these things give one a unique ingredient in their spiritual development. We need to have service that we enjoy, service that we feel inspired by, otherwise Where does the motivation, the enthusiasm come from? But that simply by itself maybe won't take us to the ultimate consciousness of a servant. Therefore, we also need to do services which are just the need of the day. Because in that moment, we put aside our own agenda, we put aside our own likes and dislikes. We put aside considerations of what is my dharma. You can't be like, Prabhu, someone's got to wash the pots. I'm sorry, it's not my dharma. I have to act in my dharma after all, you know. Krishna says, don't do another's dharma. Yes, but sometimes we also have to just come out and do whatever is the need. And so it's always good to do services which are just required. And then it's also good to do service in which one has to come out of the comfort zone and depend on Krishna. Because then one is learning dependence. One is learning that I don't have the ability. I have actually nothing. Actually, I'm just an instrument. And now, if Krishna wants to get this service done, he has to work through me. And then we get realization that I'm not the doer. Ahankara vimudhatma karta aham iti manyate. If you're in that kind of mentality that you think I'm the doer, just go and put yourself in a service out of your comfort zone. And very quickly you realize, oh my God, I'm not the doer. Krishna, you do it. And it's very humbling. So like this, we should be strategic, and we should know I need to have services which force a deeper seva bhav within me. And yeah, there's plenty of opportunity in the Krishna consciousness movement because there are always perpetual emergencies, and there is always an opportunity to do something out of your comfort zone. So there's always opportunities for those two types of services. So just make sure if those are also there, then what will happen is through those services, even the services that you're inspired by later on, it will become more focused on Krishna than your own inspiration. Because through the other types of things, naturally you've developed that sense of getting off my own self-consciousness in the whole thing. Does that help?
Maharaj, thank you for your time. I wanted to ask about preaching. How can we become better preachers? I think I've been in a lot of situations recently where people have asked me questions which I felt I couldn't answer. Even on the way here on the plane, I tried to convince the person next to me to come to the Sunday feast. And then he was talking a lot of philosophy, and I was like, wow, this is from the Gita. But then he asked me a question, and I found it really difficult to answer. And yeah, I want to preach more, but I find that I'm scared of doing it because I can't answer the questions. And another question off the back of that, which kind of relates to Devashi's question, is around developing more of a service attitude. So I think often, like especially when I'm working and different things come over me, then I think the desire to serve isn't as strong.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Nice question. How do you become a better preacher? Okay, so we can see there are different aspects to preaching. One is underpinning everything is your own consciousness, your character, and your compassion. That's at the most subtle level where you're preaching from. Then, on a more practical level, there's your knowledge, your realization, how much you've actually grasped, how much you're actually practicing. And then we can say, on a more tangible level than that, is your ability to communicate, your ability to hear someone's heart, your ability to identify their needs, interests, and concerns. So the best preachers develop themselves on all of these levels. On the most external level for preaching, yes, we need to know how to communicate with people. We need to know how to speak their language. We need to know what are they interested in, what are their concerns, what are their reservations. We need to start addressing their reservations before they've even asked them. They're like, this guy's reading my mind. You know, we need to become tuned in. Like, we need to have our finger on the pulse. Like, what is going through people's hearts and minds? Srila Prabhupada, when he came to America, he said, I was in Butler for 2 months. Practically, I was just observing the people. Because I was seeing what they're interested in, what do they do, what are they, you know, what are they trying to aim for in their life. He was just getting to know them. So that's really, really important. Communication. It's like a real golden skill. And then, yes, your own knowledge of Shastra, your own deep realization of Shastra, and how much you've then living that Shastra and applying it in your life, and the spiritual purity that we're developing from that, that also must be developed. And then underpinning all of that, what is our character, what is our consciousness? You know, people don't just hear your words, but they hear your heart. And so when you speak to someone, even if you've got the other two things perfectly, if your consciousness, if your compassion, if your heart is not in the right place, still you may not move them. Once I was on book distribution, I stopped someone. Anyway, he was like giving me so many arguments. So I was firing back. Like, I have to say, like, that day, with all humility, I basically defeated him on every point. I just answered all his questions. Like, it was like he was falling into every single place that I wanted him, and I nailed it. After some time, he said, wow, like, you answered all my questions. So I was like, yeah, wow. I was like surprised with myself. So I said, so here are the books. And he said, no, I don't want the books. I said, but I answered all your questions. He said, yeah, but I don't want the books. And then he just walked off. And I was like, oh my God, how can you not want the books? But we had, you know, I defeated you. I answered all your questions. No. So that was, my heart sunk. But then my heart sunk another 100 meters. 1 hour later, when I saw him walking up the road with a handful of books, Prabhupada's books. And I was like, he came back up to me and he was smiling at me. And I said, you said you didn't want the books. And then he said, no, I didn't want the books from you. He said, but I liked your arguments, but I didn't like you. So I decided I'll just get it from your friend down the road. You know? So I'm like, okay. It was a humbling day, you know, the school of life, Sankirtan school of life. So it's like that. We got to move people, we got to touch people. It's amazing when you think about Srila Prabhupada. He was not just a platform speaker. He didn't just come to America, sit on a seat and just start telling people. He was living with them. That's amazing. Srila Prabhupada didn't just lecture from a pedestal. He wasn't just in the ivory towers telling people the absolute truth. Prabhupada literally went down to the Lower East Side and he lived in the Bowery. He just lived with these people. It's incredible. Srila Prabhupada, he said, once I came into the Bowery and I came into the foyer and I had to step over someone who had expired. I mean, can you imagine what kind of place Prabhupada was living in? A dead person just lying there in the foyer, like waiting for the, you know, the police or whatever to take him away. That was the kind of situation in which Prabhupada was living, because he had such a heart of compassion. So we have to try to be on all of these levels, the most subtle level of our character, the knowledge on the level of our intellect and our practice, and then to be able to really speak people's language and meet them. And then, yes, every preacher will have a different effect. we just have to try our best. You know, every preacher, Krishna will use them in a different way. So some preachers will have a big influence, and other preachers may have seemingly less influence, but there's no less or more. It's just Krishna uses everyone in a different way. And so we should also not be disappointed if we are not able to have like a mass influence or feel that there's anything, as long as we're sincere and we're trying. Srila Prabhupada said, make me a failure or success as you like. So we go out and we try our best and we don't know what the effect is. So maybe that person didn't come to the Sunday feast, but maybe something is resting within them from what you said that will fructify later on. How do we know? So yes, we have to. One devotee said to me, when you lecture, you're just firing out bullets. Sometimes I visualize this when I'm giving a lecture. But you're just firing out bullets. And he says, maybe it will hit someone. You never know who it's going to hit, so you just scan the room and just keep firing. And of course, if we're living it, then it comes out in a more powerful way, you know. I don't know, this was, you know, some thoughts. Okay. Well.
Krishna Maharaj, you nicely explained the example of Rupa Goswami of the ocean mercy, and in this example we have a choice to stand at the shore or to jump into the ocean.
Jump in, yeah.
And Krishna's Kaviraj Goswami explains the mercy of Mahaprabhu as a flood where no one can actually escape. So the flood goes everywhere. Man, women, invalid, child, everyone is actually has to flood in the ocean. But still some people are trying to escape it. But even to them, Mahaprabhu has some tricks to also make them flood in the ocean. And my question is actually, how can we flood in the ocean, or how can we make sure that we are receptive of the mercy and not try to escape that flood?
Yes. Thank you so much. Very nice question. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's a very beautiful verse in the Mangalacharan of Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. He says, Anarpita chiram chirat karunaya vatirna kalo samarpayitum anuttajala rasam svabhakti shriyam. He says, Anarpita, that which was not given for a long time, samarpitam, now I'm giving very, very freely. So he says, that which was not given for a long time, the sahaja priti, the pure love of the Brajabasis, that which was confidentially locked away, that love free of reverence, that which was not given for a long time, now I'm giving it freely. So that's a very beautiful verse, and in that verse, Kaviraj Goswami is saying one should situate Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the innermost chambers of their heart. In the commentary to that verse, Jiva Goswami says, why is it that he poses the question that if Mahaprabhu is giving this love to everyone, why is it that some are not receiving it? And he says, basically they are kapat. Kapat means crooked or duplicitous. And he says there are 3 types of duplicity. And these things are the things that will block you from being fully receptive to receiving Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's love that he's giving. And he says the first thing is dhana kapat. Second thing he says is bala kapat. And the third thing he says is prema kapat. So the first one, dhana kapat, means someone who is kapat can also mean crooked, it can also mean like a miser. So dhana kapat means one who has many facilities and many things at their disposal, but they withhold that. They don't engage that and give that in the service of the Lord. So whatever you have, your body, your wealth, your facilities, your possessions, if you hold that back and you don't fully invest that in the service, then you won't fully get the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And then Jiva Goswami says, Balakapat. He said, one may give all of their facilities, but then what they may withhold from the Lord is their strength, their effort, their energy, their endeavor. They may not give their full effort. So he says they're withholding that, then they don't get the full mercy. And then he says, one may give all their dhan, they may give all their possessions, they may give all their bal, they may give all their time and energy and effort, but then they may withhold their prema, their love. In other words, they may not do it with their heart. They may not do it with their full attention and intention. And so if you want to get the full mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, you need to try to employ everything that you have. Then you need to give your energy and your effort. And then on top of that, you need to try to give your heart and do it with intention. And then the more you give like this, then you will be open to receiving Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy. So yes, Mahaprabhu's mercy is like a flood. But still, some people are expertly avoiding it because they're holding back. So basically it means to become open to receive that mercy. And that's up to us. Does that help?
So I would like to ask something that is connected to Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu and some books that I was reading about Bhava, also in the sense of emotions. So what I would like to know is why is it so scientifically sometimes presented? Because these are emotions, it's something that we feel. And then in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu we have all these classifications and you just sometimes get lost in it. And I followed the seminar of Urmila Mataji, also Nectar of Devotion, where she would go deeper inside, and it's beautiful. And of course, in this sense, we get this perception of the emotions of associates of Krishna, and of course, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he exhibited those emotions. But for example, what is the use of me reading it? Because in the end, I have to experience it. Like, I don't know if
Thank you. Yes, Rupa Goswami in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu is explaining the nature of emotions. So he says there's Sthai Bhav, there's Anubhav, there's Vibhav, there's Vyabhicharini Bhav, there's Sattviki Bhav, and they all kind of interact in different ways. And he gives the science of how there are stimulants, and then how there are symptoms, and how there are primary and secondary emotions, and he classifies it. And then he says there are 5 primary rasas, 7 secondary, and then when this one mixes with this one, and this one can't mix with this one, and it's like, my God, it's like the periodic table, you know, it seems like very scientific. It's important to know the history of how Rupa Goswami writes the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Basically, he takes something mundane, Natya Shastra. Natya Shastra is the scriptures which deal with drama, and how when you're doing a drama, how to do the drama in such a way that it begins to invoke different emotions within the audience. So there's something called Natya Shastra, which talks about how to basically invoke and arouse different emotions in the audience through a drama, and how that happens. And so what Rupa Goswami does is he takes that format, he takes that structure, and what he does is he then uses that to explain divine love. So why does he do that? Basically to give us some sense of how to understand the emotions of love that are exchanged between Krishna and his devotees. So the ultimate purpose of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu is not that we become like, scholars of knowing, which bhav and this bhav and that bhav and which one can't mix with the other one and so on and so forth. Ultimately, the purpose of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu is to give us some entrance into the depth of the emotion and how subtle and how sensitive and how deep those emotions are. Because the more that we can understand the depth and the subtlety and the beauty, sometimes the beauty is in the detail. And so the more we can understand that, the more it can attract our heart. If it's just like, and Krishna's in Vrindavan and he has great loving interactions with his devotees, it's like, okay, that's nice. But how can I really understand what that love is? How can I enter into how can my heart be moved by that love? The more detail and the more description that is given, it allows us to then have more access to trying to awaken similar emotions within us. And so the purpose of these shastric explanations is not to be expert in memorizing all the details of it, but is to allow your heart to be moved by the subtlety of how love is exchanged, and then to become inspired to also enter into such a loving exchange with Krishna, to be inspired to factor in such sensitivity in the way you interact with Krishna, and to then, without imitating, follow in the footsteps of these great devotees who express their love in that way, and try to become qualified to also express love in such a deep way from our own consciousness. So yes, that is the purpose, to become inspired. The purpose of Shastra is not to help you to know God. The purpose of Shastra is to help you to love God. Right? So it's not... so yeah. Is that okay? Okay, I have a question here, just before you come. So there's a question. I'm struggling very much with developing trust in seniors. I'm used to judge them from the externals. The same is with trusting my spiritual master, who has accepted me some time ago, but who I haven't received Diksha from yet. My problem is I still cannot trust him fully, that he is a real representative of Srila Prabhupada. I also like to listen to someone else through whom I feel a stronger surrender and connection to Srila Prabhupada. So I feel the Vani stronger through someone else, but still there is an emotional connection with my accepted Guru. What is most important, and how to develop trust? Thank you for this honest question. Trust is a very, very difficult thing in Kali Yuga, because practically at every moment in our life, people have misused our trust. Practically, perhaps when we were growing up, people that we were under protection of abused our trust. When we were in school, maybe teachers abused our trust. When we turn on the TV and we look at the media, then at every moment the media is not trustworthy. Politicians are not trustworthy. People we work with are not trustworthy. And then even when we come to a spiritual movement, we see that, my God, not even here, everyone is trustworthy. So we have to understand, because we've been tainted with so many bad experiences, we've developed a skeptical mentality. We've developed a mentality of distrust. They say in this day and age, leaders do questionable things and followers question everything. So there's a problem from both sides, because those who are in positions of authority aren't always struggling with their own weaknesses, and those who are in the position of taking shelter have sometimes an unreasonable amount of skepticism. So we're battling in this atmosphere of mistrust. Yet, trust and faith is the very foundation of spiritual life. Therefore, Rupa Goswami says, Ado Shraddha. In the beginning, there must be Shraddha, there must be faith. Some people think faith is opposed to knowledge, or faith is opposed to wisdom, but faith is not opposed to it, it's the foundation of it. So first we must have faith. But now what we have to do is we have to understand that faith has to grow naturally. Faith, you see, there's a difference between Shraddha and Nishta. Nishta is conviction. It's also faith, but it's a type of faith which has become very, very evolved. But in the beginning, you don't have Nishta, but you can have some Shraddha, some faith. And then what you can do is through a process, you can allow that faith to develop, that faith to strengthen, that faith to crystallize. And so I think in spiritual life, what we have to do, whether it's a faith with an authority in the temple, or whether it's a faith with someone you're thinking to take initiation from, it's not a question of do I have faith in this person or don't I have faith in this person. It's how much faith do I have in this person, and now how can I interact with them in a relationship to allow that faith to naturally grow. We tend to think of it in a very binary way. Either I have faith in them or I don't. But no, maybe a better way to go about it is to say, I have a little bit of faith in them, and with that little bit of faith, let me engage in a relationship. And let me see what the blocks are to giving more faith, and how in that relationship can I address those blocks and overcome those blocks so that I can invest more of my faith in this person. So I think when we begin to see faith more than something like an emotion, and we rather see faith as something which is a cultivation, then I think we go on a more progressive journey to establishing relationships which are having a much more natural type of faith. And so if there is a spiritual master in which you have a degree of faith, but also some doubts, then ask yourself, how can I now act in this relationship with my spiritual master to address these doubts, to deal with these doubts, to reveal my heart and mind in such a way that I can actually understand whether it's possible to overcome these doubts and go to a higher level of connection with this person. And if one is not able to do that for whatever reason, then one may have to say, then maybe I can have a relationship with this person, I can draw inspiration from them, but maybe they're not the person who I can take shelter from in that way, because when you take initiation from someone, there must be that implicit faith. Yasya deve para bhaktir yatha deve tatha guru. Shastra says that as much faith as you feel confident putting in Krishna, yatha deve tatha guru, you should be able to place the same amount of faith in that person who you accept to be the representative. And if you have that kind of combined faith in the Supreme Lord along with the representative, tasyaite katita hyarta prakashante mahat, then all the conclusions of Shastra will be revealed. So sometimes people think like, there's this concept of testing the guru. Like before you take diksha from someone, you're supposed to test the guru. So that was always puzzling to me, because I always thought, like, who am I to test the guru, Like, how am I going to test the guru? One devotee explained it to me nicely. He said, you're not actually testing the guru. What you're testing is your ability to put faith in that guru. There's a difference. So if you, after engaging in a relationship with a certain person, feel like, no, I can't put my faith in this person. It's not that person's problem, it's my problem. I can't put my faith in them, and therefore I have to look somewhere where I can repose my faith. But I'm not making a judgment on them. They may well be a very advanced devotee of Krishna, but for whatever reason, I'm not able to put my full faith, so let me find somewhere where I can repose my faith. But that doesn't mean you still can't have a relationship with those people and get inspiration from them. But there must be a person who we can find, who we can then say, yes, I have faith. Because then that investment of faith will allow that individual to then really contribute to your life. And that's the magic of a guru-disciple relationship. Many gifts are available in that relationship, but then it requires, they say respect should flow up like smoke. And when respect for the guru flows up like smoke naturally, then grace will fall down from the guru like a waterfall. So respect should flow up like smoke, and then grace will fall down like a waterfall. But it must come from a very natural space in the heart. Otherwise, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Agyascha shradadhanascha shamshayatma vinashyati nayam lokosti na aparo na sukham samsayatmanaha. Krishna says, for the doubting soul, there is happiness neither in this life nor the next. Shamshayatma. Just a side note on this verse, because it's interesting. When Srila Prabhupada translates this verse, the way he translates it is he says, for the foolish and ignorant people who constantly doubt, there is happiness neither in this world nor the next. So he amalgamates the agya, ignorant, the ashradadhana, the faithless, and the shamshayatma, the doubter, he amalgamates them in one. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he does it in a different way. He says these are three different levels of people. He says the lowest, seemingly the lowest person is the agya, the one who's ignorant. A little higher than that is the agya, the one who's not ignorant, they know, but they don't have the faith to engage in the process. And he says higher than them, seemingly, are the doubters, the ones who are engaging in the process but are constantly doubting. So generally we would say the ignorant is the lowest, the faithless are a little higher because at least they know but they don't have faith. And we would say higher than them are the ones who are practicing, putting their faith but still having doubts. He says these are three different types of people. Generally we would say this one, agya, is the lowest. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says actually the worst one out of these three is the doubter. And you think, why is the doubter the worst? Because Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says because they're so close and yet so far. That's agonizing. So he says, therefore Krishna mentions Shamshayatma twice in this verse to underline that the doubter is the worst. Because that means if you're in the process, if you're in Krishna consciousness and you have the opportunity to receive all this grace, but then constantly doubts are haunting us, then that's very, very unfortunate. So somehow we have to be able to engage in relationships where we can remove these doubts. So that's a process. Hare Krishna. I don't know if anyone wants to expand on that or ask anything more on that. It's a sensitive subject because faith is such a sensitive thing. Yes. Is it on this point? Faith, yeah.
Hare Krishna. Yes, I was thinking, Maharaj, on this point that perhaps it's also we have the kind of wrong expectations of who is an exalted devotee and who is a bona fide guru, and maybe you can say something about that because.
Yeah. If you want. Yes, our expectations have to be realistic. That's why it's important to ask yourself, what are the doubts that I have? And then to discuss and communicate those either with that person, the prospective Diksha Guru directly, or with other Shiksha gurus who you have faith in, because then you can understand whether those doubts are based upon realistic expectations, or whether those doubts are based on, something not that substantial. So yes, it's a very good point. I think we need to also understand what is the guru there for? What is the guru meant to deliver me in their position? Often we have the wrong definition of wrong job description of a guru and wrong job description of a disciple. Therefore we must understand deeply what is a guru meant to actually do for me and what am I meant to do as a disciple. Yeah. And also I would say another thing is it's important for us to also self-analyze ourselves and say, where am I as a disciple? Because if we have weaknesses as a disciple, there's a good chance that we will project those weaknesses into the character of the guru. So often all we're seeing is a reflection of our own weakness. So it's very important for us to also see, where am I weak? Like say for example, if someone is very, very emotionally has some kind of vacuum or emotional lacking, then that's a weakness in them. But then what they may do is they may interact with the guru in such a way and have certain expectations, emotional expectations, which are unrealistic because of their own vacuum. And then they may say, well, I'm not getting that from the guru. In other words, what they've just done is they've projected their own weakness onto the character of a guru, see. So it's important to, yeah.
Maharaj, also sometimes we hear some people think, and some people also preach, that a bona fide guru in ISKCON has to be on the level of prema bhakti. And we cannot judge. We can only judge who is, maybe, we can judge who is at nishta. So what is the right expectation in terms of this? Can a person in nishta who follows their guru be a bona fide guru in ISKCON? Or do we have to guess who is a bona fide guru? Guess who is at prema bhava?
See, when Rupa Goswami is describing bhava, and then he's describing bhava in terms of, in different ways. So one aspect of bhava is the deep internal sentiments and emotions and love and movement of a heart that a great devotee is having in their relationship with Krishna. How will we ever see that? How will you be able to detect and understand that within a Vaishnav? Vaishnavera kriya mudra vigyayana bhujoy. You cannot understand the heart of a Vaishnava. It's too deep. And with all our anarthas, what will we be able to see? But then Rupa Goswami explains that bhav can also be symptomatically detected in other ways. Kshantiravyarthakalatvam viraktir mana shunyata ashabandha samutkantha namagane sadaruchi shaktistad gunakhyane pritistad vashatishtale ityadayo nubhavashyur jata bhavan kure jane. Rupa Goswami says someone on the level of bhav, kshantir, they have an incredible level of forgiveness. Avyarthakalatvam, they don't waste any time. Viraktir, they display detachment from the world. Mana shunyata, they are devoid of pride. Ashabandha, they have a great hope, full of hope. Samutkantha, they're always enthusiastic to engage themselves in the process. Namagane sadaruchi, they have taste for the holy name of Krishna. Ashaktistad gunakhyane, they're addicted to glorifying, speaking about Krishna. They cannot stop the flow of Harikatha. Pritistad vasatistale, they have an attraction towards the dham, towards Krishna's place, and they have some attachment for that. Ityadayo nubhava sure. By these symptoms you can understand someone is in bhav. So there are also, we can say, when we associate with the Vaishnav, yes, we will not ultimately be able to see who has love, who has prema. We rely on the holy name to guide us, to reveal things to us. But we can also say there will be clear symptoms if we associate with someone by which we can understand here is clearly someone who is on a elevated level of Krishna conscious practice. And so yes, let us look for those devotees who are absorbed, who have some love. We must have faith in that. So Srila Prabhupada, he was very pragmatic in the way, and in this way encouraged us to take shelter of the Vaishnavas. Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you. Just a question on the statement you just mentioned that you rely on the holy name to guide us to our bona fide spiritual master. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah. Of course, we are using our intelligence, we are praying to Krishna, we are trying to make a decision in all sincerity to surrender to someone who we can give our heart and mind to. After all is said and done, how do we know? How do we know our heart is pure? How do we know our purpose is sincere? How do we know we're looking for the right thing? So all we can do is we try our best. We use all our facilities, we take guidance, we try to examine our heart and see that we're approaching someone for the right reasons, for the right reasons. And then after that, we turn to the holy name of Krishna. Kali Kaler Nama Rupe Krishna Avatar, because that is Krishna in this age. That is how we're accessing Krishna, through the holy name. And then ultimately we're relying on Krishna, that now by your mercy, Guru Krishna Prasade Pai Bhakti Lata Beach, we're relying on you now, Krishna, that you please guide me and you please reveal to me and confirm for me that this is the personality who I can give my heart to. And so in that sense, yes, that is what I mean when I say ultimately we turn to the holy name, because when all is said and done, then we have to rely on Krishna and pray that in all our sincerity, Krishna will never let us down.
I was searching for a spiritual master for 10 years, and I have to share always that Gorgovinda Swami is, like, for me, the best person to approach when you are looking for a guru, because his books on worship of Guru and when the good fortune arises, and it's like an indication of like who is a guru, how to find it. He smashes you when you ask questions like, how can I recognize someone who is an Uttama Adhikari? And then he says, you can't recognize him because you're not on that level. Only a person who is on the level can recognize. But what I like the most is like this introspection of yourself, how much you are crying actually to have a spiritual master. And it's really true, because if you really cry and if you look into depths of your heart about it, and you question yourself, and if there is sincerity, then Krishna sends a guru, and then you just recognize him. And maybe sometimes when I say this, it sounds like some kind of, I don't know, magic, but it really happens that way.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to share that, and recommend always to read Gorgovinda Swami's books.
Thank you.
When we didn't have a lot of time with our guru, and now are trying to deepen the connection and the relationship through reading the books and listen to audios and through service, is it possible to get the same faith like if we would have a lot of time with him in Vapu? It's very difficult to I mean the faith is there, and the connection is also there, but I think it's something else when you can if there would have been the possibility to deepen the relationship and also the friendship. This, yeah.
Yes, thank you. No doubt Vapu and association is a great gift, it's a great blessing. If that opportunity arises, if that good fortune arises, who will not take it? But we have to also understand it's not a limitation. And we always go back to Srila Prabhupada, who met his spiritual master physically only 11 times. How many of us can say, we only 11 times I only met my spiritual master? I think very few. Most of us, 90% of the disciples in ISKCON must have met their spiritual master more than 11 times. Seen him 11 times. I think so. So it's not a limitation. Srila Prabhupada was so connected with Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. One time Srila Prabhupada was in Mayapur and he walked past the Chaitanya Math where Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's Samadhi is. And he walked past and he didn't go in. And then later on, some of his godbrothers were criticizing him that just see, he did not come into the Samadhi and offer his respects. And when Prabhupada heard that, he said, they have not understood that I'm walking with Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur every moment. That was Srila Prabhupada, who was on the adventure with his spiritual master. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appears, then some of his most confidential associates appear before he comes. Some of his most confidential associates appear when he comes and does the pastime, and they do the pastimes with him. And some of his most confidential associates appear after he comes. And that's very interesting, because that means connection is going beyond space and time. It just means that someone has to frame their relationship deeper. It requires an adjustment of consciousness. It requires an adjustment in how we interact and how we connect. And that adjustment, will require some time and require some energy and focus, and will require one to become more mature, will require one to become more deep. But it's possible. So we have to try. Kadamba Maharaj himself said, because people would ask him, how do you feel? You came to the movement in 1978. You just missed Srila Prabhupada. How do you feel? And many times we heard him in a class say, I don't know I don't know how to answer you, because I feel like I'm meeting Srila Prabhupada every single day. I know more about Srila Prabhupada than I know even about my own father. If you tell me to speak about my family members, maybe after some hours I'll run out of things to say. But if you ask me to speak about Srila Prabhupada, I can speak for days. So that proves that one can have a very deep connection, but it requires an adjustment of consciousness. It requires an adjustment of approach. And the final gift of the Guru, the most difficult gift to swallow, is actually the gift of his disappearance. Because that is also a gift that the spiritual master gives in order to force the disciple to become deeper. That's the final, one of the final gifts of the spiritual master. So we have to try to see like that. We have to see opportunity. We have to see that, there's always an opportunity to connect. And yes, we may say, well, that's just a statement in Shastra, and I know the philosophy. Now we have to make the philosophy come alive. So, Kadamba Maharaj once said that Jayaveta Maharaj did that seminar called The Hopes and Horrors of Household Life. I think it was 8 sessions and 7 sessions were on the horrors, you know. Anyway, and then Kadamba Maharaj heard that he was doing this lecture, and then someone had come out of the seminar. So Kadamba Maharaj asked him, like, how was the seminar? So the person said, yeah, it was good, but it was mainly theoretical. So he said, what do you mean by that? He said, so the person said, yeah, I was in the seminar, but Maharaj was only quoting Shastra. It was mainly theoretical. So Kadamba Maharaj was saying, like, people think Shastra is theoretical. We have this conception, Shastra is theoretical, philosophy is theoretical, it's just intellectual. But it's not. Shastra is living, Shastra is breathing, Shastra is life, Shastra is the absolute truth. Shastra is Shabda Brahman, the Supreme Lord in sound vibration. Can we say it's just theoretical? So when Srila Prabhupada writes in the beginning of the Bhagavatam that the spiritual master lives forever in his instructions and the spiritual master lives with him, are we just going to say, it's nice, it's theoretical? No, that's the Shabda Brahman, that's the living reality. We have to up our game and we have to experience that reality.